Hello and welcome to Black Economics. Today we have an amazing guest with us. I would call her superwoman, but really her name is Sabrina Ben Salmi, resident in the UK with an amazing family, 5 children, all of whom I would say are super children. I mean, when you hear what they're doing, you'll be like, oh my goodness, how did this lady do this? Welcome, Sabrina. Thank you for agreeing to speak to us today. And I'm sure your story will help a number of other people who also want to be superwomen or supermen. Now, Sabrina is a Mother of the Year award winner. Now, how many people can claim to be Mother of the Year and actually win an award saying such? She is actually helping you future-proof your children. She runs courses on this and has a book on this. And she's also ranked number 2 most inspirational Black women in the UK. So hold on, who's number 1 then? Do you know who number 1 is? You got to get the competition.
No, I can't remember actually. I need to check. Yeah, no, I need to have a look. I've been asked that a few times.
Yeah, I think we need to check that out. And if we find out, we'll put it in the description underneath. But she's mother of 5 entrepreneurial children. Interestingly, she homeschools her children. Now, with the amount of things that Sabrina has done, and we're going to go through them a little later, I thought it'd be nice to go back to the beginning and see if there were clues for when she was little as to the superwoman she was going to become later on. So, Sabrina, welcome. Thank you for being here. Tell us about your life.
No, firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Oh, so go way back to little Sabrina. Gosh, I guess a memory comes to mind of being roughly 7 years old. I didn't meet my father until I was about 9 years old. My father is of Nigerian heritage and my mother's St. Lucian. And unfortunately, they separated before I was born. Both families they didn't give their blessing for the union, basically. My father was threatened to be sent back to Nigeria if he continued the relationship. They were teenagers. I believe my dad was like 17, mother 19. And I just always remembered feeling very much alienated. So my West Indian side very much judged and mocked me for being very much darker, broader nose. And my Nigerian side would really look at me and frown upon me and say, I'm too westernized. And, as you can imagine, as a little girl trying to find our identity, that caused a lot of identity issues for me during my teenage years and young adulthood. When I met my father, and I longed for my father's presence, and I think sometimes fathers don't realize the impact they have on their children. So I went through a lot of abuse. I grew up in Tower Hamlets with my mother, and I remember constantly being bullied. I had a tracheostomy, so apart from the visual bullying, it would be like, your dad doesn't want you. If he doesn't want you, no one wants you. So I remembered a lot of memories of not being wanted, not fitting in. I saw my mum, slave away, I guess that's the right word to use, whereby she worked between 2 to 3 jobs, sometimes 4, just to make sure we can survive it by herself. I just saw my mum being a big giver. I feel that she must have gone through some form of undiagnosed depression. I was a very sick child when I was born. Like I said, I had a tracheostomy. I lived in Great Ormond's Street Hospital for some time, and the Whitterton, that's who saved my life. I had near-death experiences twice. And my mother she was pregnant at 19 and then gave birth at 20. So she was a young mum herself. But I very much remember absorbing a lot of that stress, that trauma, never really quite fitting in, always kind of being on the outskirts, and very much like an scapegoat for the family. I guess little Sabrina was very much curious in life. Like I was just so fascinated by, why do the billboards look different in my area compared to the likes of Chelsea and Knightsbridge, because mum used to work there. And I didn't understand why a sandwich kind of cost differently depending on where you was. Like for a child, I was thinking it looks the same. What's going on here? So I was always very fascinated by my surrounding, the environment. And I became a people watcher because I'm the only child from my mother, but my father has many children. I don't know all of them, but I always watch people. That's how I learned. And I learned a lot about our behaviors, and it always fascinated me. One of the things I'd love to do at some point in my life is do some sort of PhD around human studies and why we do what we do. So I guess that's really what I can remember from my childhood, just a natural ability for curiosity, kindness, love. And I had this picture that I drew. One of my dreams as a child, I drew a bridge, and I wanted to connect people that were poor with people that were wealthy, because I always believed that when they connected, they can exchange ideas and practices and habits to improve each other's lives. And I think in observation as a child, I saw my mother as a helper. She was a big giver. She would always help. Not so much of a good receiver. She was very good at giving. And I think I absorbed a lot of that as a child. So as I was growing up, I very much was able to give, but I didn't really know how to receive. And more importantly, I didn't know how to ask. And I think that was a massive turning point for me in life when I started to learn how to do that.
Okay, just tell me about your teen life.
Oh, teenage Sabrina. Oh, wow. Teenage Sabrina was interesting. Teenage years are challenging, right? If anyone's got teenagers in their house, I feel for you, tweens as well. Bless them. It's a time in life that I don't think people realize how turbulent it can be. So it was very turbulent for me for obvious reasons. I had low self-esteem. I didn't start dating until I was around 18. Teenage life was very confusing for me, in all honesty, because I didn't really know who I was or where I was going. But at the same time, I knew who I was. And it sounds very contradictory because I had a very close relationship with God. I became a defender of the underdog. I started to defend people who couldn't speak for themselves, couldn't stand for themselves. I knew what that felt like. And I saw my mum go through an essence of adversity. And I remember, unfortunately, in East London, they used to do something, I won't say the word, but pea bashing. And there would just be avalanche, like groups of people that would go out and just attack Asian people. I never understood it. I know that Black people went through it at a time. And I remember that I really was against it. I knew friends that were involved and I told them not to. And I used to defend these people. So I wouldn't go out and make trouble, but I was fed up of seeing people bullied and violated. And I remember having a fight with someone, and it was a very significant moment in my teenage years, is that it just all went quiet. And I heard, don't hurt anyone, Sabrina. Don't inflict pain on others. Although you think you're defending, you're still inflicting pain. I was quite angry at that stage. And from that day on, I became a pacifist. It was a very, very strange, very surreal moment, but it's something that stuck with me for the rest of my life. And I've spoken to my kids and friends about it. And I remembered walking away and being a pacifist. And instead of fighting for people physically, I started to fight for people pen to paper. I started to empower people. I started to be the person who I wanted in my life to others. And this was like teenage years. And then I fell pregnant at 19, like my mother and my grandmother. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, I don't want to repeat the cycle. I was petrified. I love my mother, but I was petrified of becoming her because I equated single parenthood with pain because I was obviously bullied. So I wasn't a single parent instantly. We stayed together until my daughter was roughly 3. But when we separated, the pain was so deep because often we don't realize we have stagnated pain. We have pain that's like a domino effect. It triggers all the other pains. So when I became a single mom, I fell apart. Like I fell apart, not just because of the pain of what was in front of me, but because of what I subscribed to single parenthood. And people saying it's fine. My mom was encouraging me. She supported me the most. And she said to me, get up. You don't have time to do that. You've got a daughter to raise. And I remember looking at my mum and saying, I don't know where you get that strength from, because right now I feel like I'm dying. Like the pains I was experiencing, I had never experienced that pain or couldn't remember it at that time. It was such a deep pain. And it threw me back to the day I gave birth to my daughter. And I was holding her in my hand, and I was the happiest woman in the world, but at the same time, I was scared. I was so scared because I realized that I had been entrusted with life. Children are so precious, and I didn't want to let her down. And I looked at her and I promised her that I would do everything within my power to ensure that she has the best start in life. So when my mum echoed that I don't have time, it reminded me of what my promise was. And I was determined to ensure that my eldest daughter, who's Lashai, she's now 21, I didn't want her to feel like a failure, because I grew up feeling like a failure from a very young age just because my dad wasn't around. And I said, I'm gonna support you to be who you choose to be, because I don't want you to grow up and for your father to see that you didn't amount to what you could have been, because I was always told that I wouldn't amount to anything because my father
really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And look at you, Maya, haven't you proved them wrong?
I used to use the proving, but now I've just shifted over to love. I think when we just focus on our destination, you know, our vision is the postcode for our soul to follow. If we do things from a place of love, it's so much lighter. You know, I think sometimes we do have that proven, and I definitely had it earlier. My father said something, let your success be your revenge. He said it to me in a conversation, just a passing conversation. I remember I embodied that. And I was like, yes, I'm going to let my success be my revenge. I'm going to show to you. I'm going to show this. And I thought to myself, it took many years. Don't get me wrong. It took many years. I was about 31. And I said, Sabrina, you don't need to prove anything anymore. Because often those we try to prove ourselves to don't care. Because if they care, you wouldn't need to prove yourself to them.
Yeah, yeah. So you maintain a relationship with your father?
A very virtual relationship. We've never had a good relationship. We've always had a very toxic one, to be honest. He was never a present or encouraging father. Very judgmental. Everything I did was never good enough, compared me. You know, I guess culturally, Africans are sort of like that. You know, you've got to have this, you've got to have that. But it caused a lot of internal damage for a young lady who was already very fragile and had gone through a host of adversity. I only ever wanted him to just say, I'm proud of you, I love you, and you know, you're enough, and I'm here. But I never got that from him.
Even now?
No, quite the opposite. It was a very turbulent, it would be, why are you out there helping families when your family's in a mess? You know, many women think, you know, I don't like women who speak too much, who think they know everything. And, you know, it was just those comments that used to hurt, but I realized that sometimes the people we love most, they're just doing their best. Like, I've been through so much healing to get to this stage, so I'm not going to pretend it was, you know, I never sat there. I had to go through my own healing. And sometimes as children, we look at our parents as heroes. They are our first heroes. And they can do the most damage, sometimes unaware. And what I realized is that my father was an unhealed young man. He was very young when he became a father. He had his own adversities. I didn't know much about his life, but one thing that was evident is that not all hurt, people often say hurt people, but I believe that hurt people who don't choose to love then go forward and hurt others. And often in our lives, we have people who put us in therapy because they refuse not to take their own therapy, right? Go down that journey. So I had to go on this quest of healing and self-discovery to free myself up from the daughter who needs to seek the father's validation. I had to realize that he has his own traumas, and that was obviously a projection on me because I was just there to receive it. So I had to insert boundaries. It took many years, but I'm glad to say that I've moved forward.
Okay, how did you find school as a teenager? Did you enjoy school? Did you progress well educationally?
Interesting question. So I absolutely loved primary school. I used to go to Devons Road Primary School. So if anyone went there, you would know the school in Bow. And I had a teacher, fortunately I forgot her name, but it was those times when teachers could cuddle you and welcome you to school in the morning and, you know, just say that they're proud of you. And I loved school at that point. I don't remember much about academics in school at that time, but what I do remember is that I was very much supported and felt important at school. It was more about fun. It was a place to call home. It was really special for me. I think with secondary school, so I think secondary school is where a lot of wobbles happen. So I think just before going to secondary school, I remember going to special school because I have learning disabilities. So when I went through I think it was roughly 1. I had tracheostomy, emergency surgery, and they had to try and save my life, and I passed away twice. So I remember when I was going through school, there was some learning difficulties. And I had a tutor called Howard who actually taught me how to play chess. And it's interesting because his legacy has passed through, and I teach my kids. I taught each of my kids. But I remember at school that I went to a couple of schools because the way I learned was perceived in a different light. So I wasn't diagnosed with anything at the time, but I remember there was a perception of I'm not learning according to my peers. I actually went to a special school in Bethnal Green for a short period of time because I had been placed there by someone in a wrong decision that someone had made. Because I mean, my mum had to fight this battle, and then I got moved to another school. But Weaversfield School was a special school, and it's quite scary. So if you imagine someone being arrested, their arm put behind their back and put on the floor, that was actually how they dealt with kids there. So a lot of kids there were angry and aggressive, and I wasn't like that. So there was this whole battle. My mum said, yes, she's not up to the same capability as her peers, but she's not like this. And I was really scared at that school. In secondary school, I remembered, because of all the bullying and the rejection, I remembered that I never really fit in much. I was a tomboy, so I played professional football and played for the school. So I didn't like being around girls. I didn't keep many female friends, as I found that they'd done too much gossiping, and I wasn't interested in that. I remember I got a B in like media studies, and I think I would have passed my maths and English, which is a long time ago, sorry. But I do remember that anything that I was very passionately connected to, I would thrive in. It was really about the connection to it. But yes, school wasn't a pleasant space for me. Definitely not in secondary school. I don't remember me enjoying it and having that sense of belonging there.
Okay. So did you go to university after
I did,
your child?
So I went to college. It was quite interesting when we were growing up. So women were told, you know, to become a Summerfields checkout. I lived in the East End, so Summerfields was like our local supermarket. And I was told I could become a stay-at-home mum or secretary. That was how broad it was. I remember my careers advisor reinforcing that, and my teachers reinforcing it.
Wow.
And I remember 2 teachers said, Sabrina, one day your name will be up in lights. And I looked at this woman, I felt validated, I felt inspired, but I actually thought she was crazy because I'd never heard that from anyone other than my mum. So I was looking at them thinking, I don't know, but okay, I'll take it. But I didn't understand how I would get there with those 3 options. And I remember going to see a careers advisor one day, and I said, I want to go to university, and I want to, I had all these big dreams. And she said, you do realize that your dreams are a lot bigger, but your dreams are too big. You need to be more realistic, something along those lines.
What?
Yeah, because it was weird growing up. It was very much this gender-based aspect where you're a woman, you can be a checkout, you could be assistant. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with it, but my problem was that wasn't my dream. Like, why would you say that I can only be a secretary or a stay-at-home mom or work in a supermarket? So I always felt very determined. Like, for me as a child, I always had this inner belief that I could achieve something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that something was being birthed through me.
Oh, that's great. So which university did you go to?
I went to UEL University of East London. I didn't go straight away. I went as a mature adult. I think I might have been roughly 22. Okay. And Shay went to a private nursery during that time.
Yeah.
And
what did you study?
Computer science.
Oh, well done. That's excellent.
Yeah. And that's where I actually found out I was dyslexic, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia.
Oh, wow. Okay. But you still got your degree? You still...
Absolutely.
Oh, well done. So did you go into computing when you graduated?
No. Interestingly enough, that's when my life took a massive pivot. So I won a host of awards during university, and everything was going well, and I was going to go into this career because, you know, the finances were well, good salary. I thought I'd be okay. And I had a mentor, Debbie Stout. We won an award together. She was my mentee on a special program, and she worked at HSBC in the role that I was aspiring to go down. And interestingly enough, something changed inside of me. And I set up a program called the Mobile Single Mothers Project. And knowing my journey, anyone would know it was in homage to my mum. It was a way of giving back. I wanted to become something that I can give back to my mother for all her hard work. So I went to university for my mum. I thought, let her have something for her. Because by that age, once you've had a baby, for me anyway, once I had Lashai, I started to ground in what I was doing, and very focused and very direction orientated. So I did a HND in computing and the degree. So I graduated twice, and for my mum, that was something I could give to my mum. And then it was like, okay, I've done that. Let me just go forth and do what I need to do. And I set up this mobile single parents project. Very quickly, the university found out about it, and I was helping families both locally, nationally, and then internationally. I was on the news, and it was all a whirlwind. You know, here you are, have a young lady that didn't really fit in. People always said wouldn't amount to much, but the consistency was always helping people. And then one day helping one person, and then you've made national news and international news. And I was just really kind of shell-shocked. I was like a deer in headlights, to be honest. Like, I was loving my artwork. I felt very much like life was my canvas and I was an artist. Oh. And then someone said something and it kind of disturbed my flow. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on, because I was just so in the zone. It was all coming from the heart. And I couldn't quite understand what people were seeing versus what I was seeing, because you help people, you know, it's what people do. So I didn't really understand all the excitement behind it, but lo and behold, things really took off, and it was super amazing.
Oh, okay. What's the name of that organization?
The Mobile Single Mothers Project, but it's now become the Mobile Single Parents Project.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
and it's
so
still going.
Channel 4 Secret Millionaire show. We've done quite a lot of documentaries and newspapers, radio, you name it. It went everywhere. It was really
that's fantastic. Oh, well done. That's excellent. So when did your other children come along then?
So Trea decided to pop in 2004.
You just popped in, yeah?
Yeah, I was like at the final stages of my degree, funny enough. I actually left my degree early. It's interesting. So I was so inspired by the grassroots work I was doing that I went to my lecturers and I was like, I need to end. Like, how much credits have I got? I need to go. I need to go into my life. Because remember, I entered with a desire to create financial security because I was a single mom. And I was just inspired because I landed my vision. I knew what my purpose was. So I was like, I don't need this anymore. I'm not scared, you know, I know what I'm doing. And I got very inspired about planting my own forest. I started to look at the world differently. I started to think, why do we invest so much time planting trees in other people's forests without doing the same in our own forest? So it's not saying not to, but the as well as was really key for me. And I remembered my lecturer looking at me really strangely, because just before that, I was pregnant, obviously, with Trea at uni, and I was begging them to stay on because I was really ill. I found out in the emergency room that I was pregnant. They'd done all kinds of tests and then said, well, you're pregnant. I'm like, no, I'm not. So I had to beg to stay on the course because he was like, okay, if you miss these key dates, you'll have to leave. So then here I was again saying, I want to go. So it was really crazy. So I remembered him saying to me, well, when with the credits you had, you wouldn't qualify for the BSc honours, you'll only get the BSc. And I was like, fine. And if you're listening to this, you'll understand that when you find your purpose, it will make sense what I was doing at that time, because many people said, that doesn't make sense, you know, why? I found my purpose for the first time in my life. Like, I felt so sure of the pathway and what my entire life meant to me at that moment.
Oh, that's amazing. And to see that the organization is still going and still affecting people's lives is just wonderful. So well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so you had your second son?
Yes.
Okay.
2006, I got married. 2007, I gave birth to my third daughter. It was a whirlwind experience. My father-in-law died in March. My husband was from abroad. He came here in July. I gave birth in August. Massive immigration battle. It was just a very powerful time for me to reflect now. I've got a strong feeling that when we're roughly 19 to 26 is a powerful window. I don't know if you can reflect, where you feel like you have superhero powers. There's so much that you can do, so much that you can achieve that are just unimaginable. And I remembered saying things that I didn't have the internal intellect myself to say it. So I was just bewildered about, where did this come from? Where did all this confidence come from, this know-how? And I remember I was in this battle and I was just like, no, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to move heaven and earth to ensure that my husband is here for the birth of my child. I will go to every court in the land to make sure this is actioned. And I remember getting a call, and they approved his visa, and they handed it to him, and they said, you know, the woman you've married, she's determined. So I really hope that you support her, because I've never experienced this kind of interaction. So, you know, you think that battle's over. Then I had to give birth. Then we were on the Secret Millionaire show, and there was a whole whirlwind. And then I thought I was just in a normal documentary, because they give a cover story, right? A documentary to highlight the project I was doing for the single parents. And then I found out I was on the Secret Millionaire show, on the front of covers of the Metro and all kinds of papers. And then again, my life just took a twist. So my life has been a case of multiple whirlwind experiences, like, what on earth is going on? And I just surrendered to the moment. And my marriage we've been married 15 years, and it was a massive challenge, finding who I was from different cultural backgrounds. He struggled with letting me go out and be myself, and felt that if he just keeps me at home and wrapped up, I was too friendly, I was too welcoming, I was too inviting. And so it was, again, I found myself in this spot of, my God, what's going on? You know, I'm married. I thought I married the person of my dreams. I've got my family. Like, I prayed for this. And there I was, starting to lose my confidence. And I hadn't felt like that.
Wow.
Because I was told I shouldn't go out, or to be a real mother, I need to stay at home, you know, be a stay-at-home mom, and, you know, leave all my dreams behind. So there was this battle. Do I be a stay-at-home mom? Do I go out to work? Like, I was just very confused. Like, how can I be a good mother, be a good daughter? So I was very much in this phase of being everything to everyone and being nothing to myself. And I did that until the age of 31. And I pleased everybody in every way, because I avoided conflicts. You know, I was a caged bird. I didn't know who I was again. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to rock the boat. I was scared of losing the one thing I had prayed for my entire life, because I always wanted to have a family. And it was the hardest thing to think, well, if I don't do this, maybe it won't last long. And I had never walked away from anything in my life, because things often walked away from me. So it was a very confusing time.
Still together?
Yes, ish. I've grown. I've grown.
And he's grown too, I hope.
In ways that are good for him, but not necessarily good for me. There's still this turbulence around what I do. He's never quite supported the work that I do or the kids do very much. It's not good enough, just the whispers, but because of my background, so I studied a lot of psychology, NLP, and I just felt that this isn't fair for both of us, because I'm not the same person that I walked into this relationship as. I didn't know who I was. And going through an avalanche of suppression really grew me. It grew me. I don't think we need to go through pain to grow. I really struggle when people say that you need adversity to grow. I don't think we do. I think the world can be a very cold and painful place when people feel they have the right to project and inflict pain on others. But I don't think we need to, because I don't go out and inflict pain on others in order for them to stretch. I can grow people in different ways. And life has its own way of growing us. So I just feel that our relationship has just run its course. I would love to believe it hadn't, but the truth is there. And I think the hardest thing is that it took me years to move forward, because again, I've never walked away from anything. Why would I walk from the one thing that I always prayed for? But I realized that in order for me to reach my full potential, in order for my children to reach that full potential, I need to be in a relationship that's more balanced, that's more giving and supporting. I don't want to just be in a relationship just so it looks like one. I want to feel that support that I need as a woman.
But I think it's interesting that you have managed to achieve and win all your wars and everything, despite everything not being perfect in your life.
I had to, but that was the driving factor. You see, remember the first essence is that I made a promise to my child, Lashai first, and to each child that arrived thereafter. So there wasn't a plan B. What I realized, that I was embarking on a quest that was bigger than me. So going to my late grandmother, unfortunately, she passed away this year, my mother's mother, and then my father's mother passed away about 2-3 years. And one thing that was very evident, I don't have family infrastructural support. So my mother's there. My mother lives about 2.5 hours away from us. And, we see each other as much as we can. But I don't have aunts, uncles, cousins, I don't have that extended village. So everything that I did had to work, because I had a very dark prognosis health-wise. And I didn't think I was going to be on this planet for very long. And if you're a mother or a father, a parent, or anyone, that has loved ones around you and listening to this, you'll know exactly how I felt. It was that painful silence when I was looking at scans and speaking to the physician and just going, this isn't my calling. Like, I have to sort this out. I've got kids. It sounds weird, but I was like, I haven't got time for this. And it sounds really weird, but it was the one thing that got me up. At stages, if you go online, you'll see I was like a dead woman walking. I had like this scarecrow here. But I was a woman determined that if I left this planet, my children would have somewhere to go. They will have something to know that their mother tried. And that was really how we embarked on our journey. It wasn't a silver spoon. We didn't sit down and, conjure this up. It was really through adversity. It was that everybody in my life who could have loved and supported me turned against me, and I felt very much alone. And I was very concerned that if I wasn't there, then what for my kids? So we sat together and I taught them everything that I knew. And they didn't really know the situation when they were young. Sometimes kids do. I never spoke about it to them. I never said to them, this was that. But I was determined. I lost the fear of judgment. I lost all of those fears, because the one thing that was important is, if I'm not here tomorrow, then what? Then what?
But this is your driving force.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Well, that's what's made you a genius then, really. Gosh. So that is what made you start to investigate homeopathic remedies, health, psychology, reasons for illnesses.
Absolutely. That's what made me start researching. I started to find out, I managed to heal myself, thankfully.
Wow.
I started to find out about a friend of ours, a doctor. I remember Zoe. We were out in Hempstead for lunch. We had met at the British Library, and she said, "Oh, you know, if you watch this movie, The Secret," and I hadn't heard about it, and then I started to hear about it, but mainly through church, and it was like, "Don't watch it." So I was thinking, it was a bit like, let me watch it. So I watched it, and that really empowered me. I think sometimes we take what we need from different things and put all the pieces together.
Yes.
But that really catapulted my healing journey. I started to look into things that, you know, teachings of Dr. Sibi, Dr. Leila Africa. I started to go inwards. I started to connect with, what are we that's deeper than this? You know, there's something very profound that happens when you realize that tomorrow is not guaranteed. And I started to look at body language, like you just touched on, and body language, not in the terms of how we conduct ourselves, but body language in terms of how our body speaks to us. They're called markers. And it's said that the marker will go away when we address the issue. So we might have a cough, or we might have an illness, and it might be on the left or the right. And anybody that understands where I'm going, they'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. So I started to look at my elements and really diagnose what was going on. So because I went through an avalanche of trauma and pain and sadness and loss and grief and so on, it all started to make sense what I was experiencing in my health. And I was just like blown away. I'd go, oh my God, this is gone. And I had like lumps in my hands and various things. And it just blew my mind. And I just realized that we have a body that's been designed to heal. And the only time it doesn't do what it needs to do is because something or someone that's sitting in our seat gets in the way of that. And that really shifted my mindset. When I started to look at Dr. Bruce Lipton. He had some interesting studies around, you don't inherit diseases. And I'm saying it like that for a reason, because he was saying disease. What it is the behaviors that create the same problems, because we're repeating the same generational behaviors. And again, like what you were saying, that inspired me to start looking at my bloodline. I started to look at my mother's side, her father and her mother. I started to look at my father's side, my grandfather, my grandmother. And I started to really see things that wasn't present, visual to me firsthand. And sometimes the clues are right in front of us and we don't see it. And that was a game changer for me.
Oh, wow, amazing. Well done. So you've written some books. Tell us about the books that you've written.
Yeah, so 2011, I wrote a book called Lone Parenthood, How to Create the Life You Deserve. And that was after I attended a 2-week training that really did transform my life. At the time, I was being mentored by a gentleman called Ewan Wong. And we met at an event, and the coaching academy, you know, like the free weekend they do, and we were there and we were just connecting. And I'm always very internally led. My steps are very ordered. I'm very spiritually guided. And I had this voice saying, I need him to mentor me. And I just met this gentleman, and we had already said bye. And I just ran back up to him, tapped him on his shoulder, and I said, I'm so sorry, but I just have to action my feelings. I feel compelled to connect with you, and I'd love you to be my mentor. And he was like, yeah, sure. But you could just see the shock on his face, because I kind of caught him off guard. But I thank God that he said yes, because he basically invited me into a world I didn't know existed. And I found myself delving into a lot of NLP and neurological studies, and he expanded my awareness, and he invited me to attend this 2-week training out in Isha. It's outside London. And there I am on the phone with him in a coaching session. And he said, Sabrina, tell me about your family. So I was talking about my kids and my mom and my husband and what they need and what they do and what I do for people. And then he said, what about you? Tell me about you. And there was this long, uncomfortable silence. I don't know if you remember a time when someone asked you something and you just didn't have an answer. And that silence wasn't because I didn't want to answer him. That silence was because I was literally searching for the answer. And he's like, are you there? I'm like, yes, I'm here, but I don't know. I've been so much to so many, but I don't know who I am to myself. And he invited me to go away for the 2 weeks. He says, it'll be life-changing. And I was a slow developer, so I was very naive usually, but this time I was like, you go away for 2 weeks and you start seeing the world new eyes. I was like, really? You don't understand where I am or what I've been through. But lo and behold, on the last day of that training, I stood up and I said, I'm going to write a book. Sabrina didn't know how to write a book. Sabrina didn't know the first thing about publishing. But what I did know is that I had found answers to many people's problems. And I was determined to share it. And because I was working with single parents already and had a following, I felt that a book was a good medium to share it on. But I didn't know how to do it.
But you did it.
I did.
You found the way.
Yes.
Good. Tell me about your other books.
So I have another book called #Homeschooling. That book is one, I've got 3. That book is one that came out of nowhere. I mean, just an evening, just about to put the kids to bed. Imagine being with me. I'm going up the stairs, literally, come on guys, we're gonna go and get ready for bed. Give me one moment, go downstairs. And I just felt inspired to pick up my laptop. It happens a lot. You'll see the patterns in my life. I picked up this laptop, told the kids I'll be there in a minute. I got stuck on my laptop for about 3 hours. And I was just saying, oh, I'm coming. It was so surreal. But it came out as #homeschooling. It's all about our journey. It was published in 2020, but I wrote it in 2019 when I took my kids out of school, because I went through hell when my kids were in school. And the book basically depicts the journey from state school to homeschooling, everything I did, things you need to know, legality, what you need to do, what you don't do, and so on and so forth. It was mind-blowing. And we had a partnership, not a partnership like that, I guess. We had this amazing connectivity with Brunel University. So they basically they pay for my children's education. They fund all of that, which is just mind-blowing. And they made my youngest son their first ever in history honorary STEM ambassador. He was only 6 at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. Our life, like I said, it's many whirlwinds. And we started meeting the VP of the university, Lady Kitty, who is the Queen's cousin. We were just introduced to all these people. And then fast forward, we were able to secure 20 fully funded places for 20 homeschooled families, which is significant. It's never been done in history. And because of a wonderful lady called Leslie Warren, she just added a unique essence to our homeschooling journey. And that was really what inspired me to write the books. I felt I had to document this because it didn't make sense to me. And I wanted to show people the divinity that takes place behind all of the layers of what people see on the outside. And that was published the same month the entire world shut down. So you can imagine my shock and horror going, what's going on?
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope that sales have been good, because a lot of people are homeschooling. So, it came at the right time.
Yes, very, very interesting. And the last one, I'm writing about 3 at the moment, but the last one I published is called How to Future-Proof Your Child, the New Norm. And one of our contributors in that book is Dr. Grouse, OBE, who is actually the international director for Kidzania. I don't know if you know Kidzania, but it's an education, experiential learning. Yeah, so I was very inspired by that partnership, and it came out of the way. This man has such a beautiful heart and message. And that book is really powerful because I've gathered together a host of authors that have contributed a chapter to really talk about the key fundamentals and how can we future-proof our children in a world that's so uncertain. Yeah. I felt that was an important layer coming after the #homeschooling, because everyone was homeschooling, people who didn't want to homeschool had to homeschool. And I felt that was just insane, because not everyone can homeschool. It's not for everyone, especially if you don't have a community. So who would you support? Who would you lean on? Where would you get all those support systems from? And that book really shares some golden nuggets about what needs to be put in place and what are those lifelong intergenerational skills that we can transfer to our children. that can last a lifetime, no matter what the external world looks like.
Okay, let's step back a little. What were the problems the children were having at school while you took them out?
Oh, God. Lashai had to be homeschooled when she was around 9. Yeah. So she was being bullied by students and teachers.
Oh my goodness.
So she went to a state school. Yeah. See, parents need to be very aware of what bullying is. I think often we think it's just from students, but more often now when I'm meeting parents and speaking to them about teachers, they go, that's my point actually, because I can look back and see things that didn't line up. So for instance, I went to school plain black shoes, as we know, parents, and she had a diamante. And this teacher, instead of what I would have felt, you contact the parents. She had my daughter remove her shoes in class, and my daughter was made to walk around in her socks or tights, what she would have had. But I thought that was inhumane. Why would a child be, someone could have stepped on her toe, she could have dropped, something on her. It just didn't make sense. I remember taking a cake to school and the cake being returned saying, not that there's maybe nut allergies or something, which makes sense, but we didn't slice it, and they're not allowed to slice it.
What?
Yes, and Lashai would tell me things, but because she was so young, I think she might have been younger than 9 actually. I remember she was saying, she was putting her hands up, and the teacher said, because we were on Child Genius, no, she was younger than 9, so we were on The Secret Millionaire, which was 2007, so Shay would have been 7. So when she was going to school, unfortunately, they were saying, oh, we saw you on TV, and we were the millionaires, but it was supported our project. So she got bullied. It was crazy that our lives turned round overnight, and it was quite destroying but also liberating. So people were very nice, but then there was a lot of adversity we were facing in our own lives. So I was going to get a part-time job. People were saying they didn't want to employ me because I was fine. They could see me fine. I was thinking, you don't know what I'm saving for. Like, shouldn't have to justify that. So then Lashai was met by that same justification at school, and she was told that, why don't she ask her tutor when she goes home? How debilitating for a child to be refused her question in class in front of all of her peers, to be told to wait until she goes home. And so many things were going on. And so she had to be homeschooled for a period of time. She went back into school, but we had a lot of back and forth when Shay was in school. And then she got to a point where she was really sick in secondary school. And we couldn't find, the doctors were doing all kinds of research and tests. They couldn't find out what the problem was, but she just has no energy. She was at school a couple of times a week, and I was having issues because she obviously not, the attendance officer would be on board. And I got to a point, I looked at my daughter and I said to her, what's going on? And she said, Mum, I don't want to be at school. She said, it's soul destroying. She said, all of this personal development you're teaching me, I'm learning so much, but at school, it feels like it's just fear mongering. Like they're making me believe I can't be who I know I am. And then I'm living a double life at home where I know I can. And she wouldn't share her life with school. So she was sent out to different schools to speak, but the school was never forthcoming and supportive. To one extent, I remember when she published her book in 2011, she actually gifted 2 copies to her school, and it was returned to her in the same brown envelope. It was just horrific, but then they all went through different things. So Trea went through an avalanche of bullying in primary school. Secondary school was a bit different. Primary school, he went through a lot of bullying for being smart. He went through a very strange time where he's always been very quiet. Then the school started saying he was disrupting the class. And I was thinking, you just told me he's very quiet. He's top set. How did that happen? And, I never really wanted to believe it. You hear these different agendas and you go, you're kidding me, right? So I found myself in all these loops of battles with my son, and he's smart. He wasn't a troublemaker. But then you were saying he's so disruptive, and where's this all coming from? So there was lots of issues going on, and then my kids had to be moved to different schools. Yasmine, unfortunately, was attacked, a horrific attack. 2 boys, one holding each arm, and while 2 boys were punching the stomach. And it was a teacher that had seen it, so it wasn't even from the mouth of my daughter. She said, if I hadn't seen it, I would have never believed it. It was such a vicious attack. And again, school is the way, it's not so much what's happening in schools, it's the lack of ability of knowing how to deal with it. These things were very rarely dealt with to satisfaction as a parent in my eyes. And they like, my kids have been bitten on their back, and there's a host of different stories. But I think what was really the essence for me is that I felt if school was a place for learning, why is there such a massive battle? I'm having to pray before they go in. I'm having to detox them when they come home. I'm having to, you know, some teachers were amazing, but then I met some people and you just felt there's something about their energy. And I just had enough. And I started hearing stories. And then I think at that time when I pulled my kids out, there was a lot of boys in secondary school that were actually being stabbed in school, just outside school. There was so much going on. I think Sabrina just got to the point of enough. And again, that voice came and said, now's the time. Because I'd wanted to homeschool them for years. They had been asking me. My youngest son actually said to me, Mum, can I be homeschooled? And I laughed because it was such a direct question. He said, can you sort out your life so you can actually homeschool me? Like, what is it you've got to do? Why can't you do it? And I looked at him and I didn't have an answer. So I was like, I better just sort out my life. And I just felt that because we were so busy and because of the way our lives are with the other things that we do, it just felt right. And it was at that moment I realized I had to. It was at that moment that something clicked, that it was just our time. I didn't understand what was going on, but it was our time. And then events that happened afterwards started to make sense as to why.
Oh, wow. Okay, so tell me about the achievements of your children, one by one. Shall we start with the youngest first?
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, let's start with the youngest and keep going upwards until the eldest.
Absolutely. So Amir is 8 now. He is a funny young man because his coming out into the world was a very funny one. So with the other kids, we just sat down and they kind of fired off. But he was a lot younger than all of his siblings when he started. So he was 3.5 when he started writing his first book, and he published when he was 4. And the funny thing is, he would always be on the stage with us when we had to introduce ourselves, and they would get to Amir and he would look at me very fast. I was thinking, what's wrong? He would say his name, but he just looked upset. So I remember saying to him, what's wrong? He said, I don't understand why I keep saying my name's Amir and I'm 3.5 years old. He said, Mummy, my siblings don't say that. And I was thinking, why are you upset? He said, I want a brand. Why do they have brands and I don't have a brand?
Wow.
And I was like, do you know what a brand is? It was just so funny. And yeah, so that's really where young man, so he's called Amir Ben Salmi, aka Mr. Intelligent, because the intelligence that he exuded as a young boy was astounding. He would always use these big words and would always be about rules and confinements. And he would also tell me, Mum, you told us this, can you do this as well? He was a very interesting character from a very young age, as soon as he can speak. So he has his own affirmation cards, and so he's got some affirmation cards that kids can use on a daily basis, and affirmation was a big part of our family, being such a large family. And he's written a book. I don't know if you need me to, I've got the books here, I don't know if you need me to show them.
Yes, please show them. Yeah.
So these are the affirmation cards, and this one here, say it with me, it's I love my family. So he's just got a set of 52 cards that he's created. The first book he published is called Because I'm Intelligent, Easy as Pie Affirmations. This is a different edition because it's actually published under his own publishing house. The kids have got their own publishing house. He's got another book called Because I'm Intelligent, I Become What I Affirm. I haven't got a copy of that one. And he's recently published this book, Because I'm Intelligent, I Play Chess. If you remember my story around Howard teaching me to play chess, that was a really touching book that my son wrote, because all of my children know how to play chess. But Howard was the first man that showed up in my life as a positive role model. So it meant a lot to me. Oh. So Amir has his own affirmation audio. He's got his own courses, so he teaches people his own age how to write books, and he's got his own affirmation work. So but kids can do this very easily, and this is why we have these programs in place to understand that as a family you're all a unique piece to the puzzle piece, and you just have to interconnect. We then have Paolo. So Paolo Ben Salmi, he's 12 now, and he's AKA pint-sized adventurer. He is the one that breaks every rule. He's very, he's the opposite to Amir. He breaks every rule. He's all about adventure and going out there. But his father got him an Xbox and a PS4 at one point, and he kind of got addicted, and he started to have like console rage. And I was thinking, this isn't going to work. And I remember asking him to cut down his screen time, and he wasn't, and it was just this battle. So he went off and did some research. It was the only way I could get him off. And he did some research and came back and said, Mom, I'm so surprised at what you've told me, and I've learned this and I've learned that. So he actually published a book. His first one was called Pint-Sized Adventurer, How to Get Your Kids Off Their iPad and Into the Wild. I don't know if I've got a copy of that one here, but it was his very first book. And I found it so profound that sometimes we try to tell our kids things and they'll not do it. But when we rope them in the sense of asking them, do research with me, teach me, help me, they come back with really powerful findings. And he's an ambassador for Water to Go company, and he's planted 10,000 trees out in Tanzania, permaculture. And these are trees that actually generate jobs in the community and education as well. So they teach them about bioscience of trees and how trees are alive and communicate. It's so profound. So Paolo's got this idea of creating this movie, and it's just so mind-blowing because the movie is called Tree Troops, and that was why he actually planted the trees. And he's created a book series. And
wow, book series, not one book, a book series.
So this is the first one, Tree Troops. Tree Troops, an epic discovery. So this is all about a story that he's come up with about trees being alive and how they sacrifice themselves in order for mankind to thrive. And I was just like, wow, this is so profound, because it speaks to every parent that every child writes stories, every child draws pictures.
Yeah.
But how do we empower them to share that by publishing?
That's
so Paola has, go ahead, sorry.
Because they have very vivid imaginations.
Exactly.
So you harness that. That's fantastic.
Exactly. So I forgot to mention, so Amir's publishing house is called I Am Publishing. And like I said, he's the youngest ambassador for Brunel University. Paolo's publishing house is called Adventurous Publishing. The second in the series is this one, and it's Tree Troops, Jeremy Oak, Defender of the Oaks. And the one that really blew my mind is Book Free. So Book Free is really profound for me, because he turned and said to me something really profound. He said, Mom, I want to make this book come to life because I'm doing this for my movie, Tree Troops. So this one's called Let's Explore the Tree Troops Forest. So he's gone ahead and planted a forest in Haiti. So Tanzania
and Haiti.
Yes. So people can actually, when they get this book, they can actually plant trees in the forest, which is the Tree Troops Forest. That's his way of paying it forward. He's got a very special connection with nature and exploring. And he talks about going on 2 adventures, one outside in the world and the other one being inside to discover who we are. Another one of his books is Pint-Sized Adventure, Mindset is Key. So what happens with my kids will basically share their own journey. So whenever they go through trials and tribulations, they find something that works for them and they document it. So he realized that in order for him to get to where he's going on his adventure, you first have to have the right mindset. So he has workshops and things. And what you'll find, all of my kids do the same thing. So they've got teachings, trainings that people can do. They mentor.
They mentor as well. Wow.
They're advisors as well. They sit on various boards, and it's insane what people can do irrespective of their age. And I think that's really important for parents to grasp, because had I not supported them to do what they do, I would have held back their development. They can have fun learning. They don't work 9 to 5, but they have so much fun contributing. And the most important thing for me as a mother is that I grew up in a time where children were seen and not heard. But I want my children to practice for as long as possible, that they can validate themselves. They don't have to wait for the external validation. They can validate that their thoughts become things and their opinion matters. And then we have another one here, Pint-Sized Adventure, And this one, How to Become an Author Using 7 Key Principles. And that one's just to teach people how to write books, because he often gets asked how to do that. So those are the ones that he has published. And Paolo's an interesting young man because he often breaks the rules. I would get deliveries to the house and I'm like, what have you done? He goes, oh, Mum, I've met the CEO and he's going to send me a gaming chair. And he managed to become an ambassador for this organization. And I was just like, I don't even know what's going on. So he's a funny boy. He's a real go-getter, but with a great heart, an absolute great heart. We have Yasmine. Yasmine is 14. She's all about love and healing. They've all gone through bullying. But Yasmine's bullying became a very focal point of her development. These are some cards that she developed herself. I choose to love me. So they're just affirmation cards, just to set the right premise for us on a daily basis. Paolo's got cards as well. I totally forgot to share them, sorry. So they're Paolo's. But going back to Yasmine, Yasmine's got a book series called The Choice Is Yours. So her first book is called The Choice Is Yours. This is it here, sorry. The Choice Is Yours, your thinking cap for living and loving life. And this one was all about her healing. So the C is for connection, A is for action, and P is for presence. She felt that when she was healing by going to a lot of these personal development events, she had to practice these key principles to get herself back in alignment. And I felt it was really interesting for Yasmine because she's one of my shy members of the family. She was always very naturally an introvert, and she was bullied for being quite kind. So she would put in ladybirds and leaves, she would get mocked and hit. And she went through a lot of physical bullying, so it impacted her very severely. We have, just trying to see what other books we have here. So your thinking cap for living, love and life. We have this one. So My First Day, transitioning from girlhood into womanhood. And she was inspired to write this by peers at her school, because one of her friends had drank cranberry and she said, oh, the cranberry's coming out. And we had a family talk about that. And I was speaking to my mum, yes, exactly. And I was speaking to my mum, and my mum was talking about the taboo around this. And it's quite interesting that we sometimes have these perceptions that everyone just knows. So a lot of young girls at school start their menstrual cycle, but don't even know they're starting because no one's really told them or sat them down or prepared them. So they'll have a lot of these embarrassing moments in schools and, you know, maybe in class or in the playground or just underwise. So my daughter said, that's not cranberry. It wouldn't go through you and come out. She said, you know, maybe you've started. My mum talked to me about that. So she's written this book. And she's partnered up with a company called Jules that create these tampons that, not tampons, sorry, they call them napkins. And they basically are organic, because what we don't realize, a lot of the things we're using are toxic. And the reason why a lot of women are having hysterectomies is because of the toxins that's being released in these things. So that's really why Yasmine, oh, it's powerful. And if you read the book, you'll learn so much. And I was blown away. So Yasmine was very particular about partnering. And for me as a mum, having 2 daughters, you can imagine my fear that I've been using those pads for quite a while, right? And I'm introducing my daughter to things that are damaging their bodies. And I didn't realize in America, I don't know about here, but because of the company that does the pads, they done research. There's a lot of women between 25 and 30 having hysterectomies. And that's heartbreaking because of the damage, the toxins that are actually being released into our wombs. And it just makes sense, you know, with high levels of thyroids, as women, we need to be so careful. Yasmine's also written another book called The Choice Is Yours. I'm Not Just a Pretty Face, I Am Intelligent Too. Now, this book was quite interesting response to some experiences she had at school, because she was talking to me about how boys rate female bodies. They give them a score between 0 to 10. And yes, that was my response exactly. And we got into this conversation with myself and Lashai and Yasmine. And Yasmine was saying she really wants to publish a book to start a conversation. So this book is a conversation starter around how women have been sexualized and objectified for far too long. that with our contributions since the beginning of time, it's made the world such a different place. So why have women been reduced to just a sexual object for someone's desire? You know, culturally, some women's ambition is reduced to just being a mother. You know, it's not even worth educating you because you're just going to be a mother. And there is no just in being a mother, right? Women deserve the same respect and to be honored. You know, we are a spiritual being that brings life forth. There is no life without a woman. And I felt it very interesting that she wanted to start a conversation around that. And there's another book that she's written that I really love. It's called The Choice Is Yours. Unfortunately, I haven't got it here, but it's called The Choice Is Yours When I Chose to Be in the Choice. And that title touches me so deeply as a mother, because Yasmine has always been about choices. She feels that we can always choose love. We always have a choice to choose love. We can always choose forgiveness. And when I chose to be a choice, it's like a series of beautiful quotes that she's carved out, and she's connected it to her 3 points, you know, connection, action, and presence. And she's managed to really translate a powerful message about how we have choices at different stages of our life and how our choices determine our outcome. So you can see my children are my biggest teachers. They've been mentoring me for many years.
So how old is Yasmine?
14.
14.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, the oldest two now.
So we have Trea. I haven't got all his books. So Trea's written this book and co-authored with his sister. So this was a co-authorship with also one of their mentors. So they have a property mentor called Doug, and Trea's written a host of books. So he's got the 10 Seconds to Child Genius, which is a maths book. Unfortunately, the gentleman who he co-authored that with died last month. They had phenomenal maths workshops teaching ancient mathematical techniques.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so his name's Philip Chan. They did it together, and they've had a beautiful partnership up until then. So it was quite a shock, sadly, that he passed last month. Trea's written books, you know, just sharing that, sorry. Yeah, sometimes when you speak about it, it comes up. But yeah, so Trea's written a series of books about maths, about his journey. He's got one called From Eton Road to Eton College, because at 12 years old, he participated in a Channel 4 Child Genius and was ranked one of the 20 top smartest kids in the UK. And then he went on to sit papers at Eton College. And it was never on our map. You know, I'd been raising my kids on my own. I just done whatever I could. And him arriving at Eton, just being immersed into that world, was quite a profound achievement in the family. And he wrote a book on it. And because we actually used to live on Eton Road for 10 years at the time when he went. So it was quite a profound connection there. So he's got many books about his journey, about how to achieve. He's written a book about stocks and trading, because he's had a trading mentor who taught him all about money for the past 3 years. So he's enjoyed that. So he thought he would document that as well. Trea is a proud Harrovian, because he's taken his A-levels at Harrow on the Hill, famous, very, very prestigious school, British school here in the UK. And he's done a talk, he's done his TED talk. He's got his own affirmation cards, workshops, and mentors as well, and coaches. He done a TED talk on finances as kid stuff, because he wants financial education to be something that we teach all of our kids as a life skill, not just as something you're interested or not, because we all have to interact with finances in our life, right? And he was invited to be a guest speaker at the Steve and Marge Harvey Foundation, the American, I don't know if you know Steve Harvey.
Yeah.
So he did a talk there. So he's enjoying himself. He was very shy growing up, always loved numbers. And numbers and sports has really been his breakthrough, to be honest. He got a scholarship through First Point USA to go to America to do his university studies. We're not sure about that because of obviously the way the world is. So just not too sure whether he's gonna decide to go still, but it's there, he's achieved that. And then the eldest one, so Trea's 17, and the eldest one is Lashai. So we've recently just published this curriculum book, actually. So becoming an author with the Ben Salmis. Lashai designs a lot of our family. She's like the creative director for a lot of our family's graphics now. So she heads that team. She actually embarked on a passion of hers for intercultural connectivity. So she believes that young ladies need to know who they are so they can find out where they're going. Watching mum, I guess you get the clue there. She's been watching mum and thinking, yeah, mum had a bit of a wobble, but it was identity. Who was I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? So she wants to do a trip to some places in the Caribbean, Africa, taking young women back to their roots so they can discover who they are. And she's got this beautiful program she's put together. But the starting point for that program, which is quite interesting, is that when she was a teenager, she went into her room and she said, Mum, I want to create a project. I want you to help me. And she started to delve into the Korean culture. You know, they got into the K-pop, the K-dramas, and it's gone from strength to strength, Dawn, in a mind-blowing way. Last week, we were celebrating their 10th year celebration. She was given a distinguished representative award. She's received an award from the First Lady of Korea. She's for influence. Yes, I'm blown away because it was a hobby, and seeing kids create organically. I know she's a young lady now, but there was no manufacturing for me. She was just, look, she speaks Korean. She just went off and learned and taught herself. So she actually is the creative director for their program at the Korean Culture Center. And wonders never cease to amaze me. And we've been out to Korea, South Korea, and she was whisked away on all the TV channels. And people were saying to me, like, who's that? I was just like all over the place again. And they were like, wow, what's going on? They're going like, who's this lady? So they've got something called SM Town. So I guess SM Town is like an equivalent of BMG, like a lot of the big record labels here, but it's a big deal out in Korea. So they basically hired a film crew that took her out to lunch and took her through this museum and got her opinion. And I was just looking, going like, I just thought we were going on holiday for her 19th birthday. And all this was happening. So it was just really amazing. Lashai won a Regan Hillier Young Leaders Award back in 2017, which meant that myself and her flew out to Bali, all expenses paid, stayed there for the week. And it totally transformed our life. They taught us things that I couldn't understand. And Lashai heads Regan Hillier's youth element of her program. And I'm just always speechless about what God can do when you actually surrender to the process.
Oh, wow, this is fantastic. Honestly, this is just amazing. I mean, I can't think of any other family in this country that is doing as much as your family has done. I just can't think of any. I mean, if there are, then their marketing is not very good because we've not heard of them.
There'll be plenty more once they start doing our program. Like, we're not doing anything that's different. We're just productizing, and that's why we want to teach more families.
So you want to help other families to be the same as yourself.
That's the reason why we share the family mission, so other families can get involved. Because the primary essence is that most of my life was chosen for me. I just found myself in situations, I just had to make it work. But we get more choices. A lot of the things that hold people back is finances and a house to have a roof over their head, right? So we want to liberate more families, primarily single parent families that have been, from financial constraint backgrounds or gone through domestic abuse. And that's really our heart mission. And we want to do that far and wide.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you. I've got to say thank you for what you do and what you've enabled your children to do. I've got to say thank you. On the behalf of the Black community and also the general British community, because you're making Britain look good as well as.
I like that.
Yeah, you are, seriously. Now, tell me about your organizations and things that you've co-founded. And then, we'll end there because there's a lot of things we're going to do with you going forward. But just let's finish off by talking about your organizations or things you've co-founded and worked on.
Absolutely. So I co-founded a school called Harris Invictus, which is based out in West Croydon. It's a secondary school. I'm not the brainchild behind it. I would love to pretend I am, but I'm not. But a Wednesday orator is the brainchild. I remember having a conversation with him. He's the gentleman that set up Our Heritage and various projects. You know, there's many things that he's known for, but I remember having a conversation with him. He was looking for a school for his son. And he couldn't find the right school, so he decided to build one. And I am just in awe of his determination as a father. If he cannot find a school, I will build one. And his son went to the school, and I think he would have finished now, actually. It's been a while back. So it's an interesting school to be a part of, and looking to the parents and the children, just blown away knowing where the vision came from and what the why was. Our why can drive us beyond just remarkable essence. It took 4 years to get that school up and running. It's 2 years to get the school to go through the entire program, but we had to go through twice. I'm really glad and very proud to be a part of that project. So the Mobile Single Parents Project, the whole purpose around the Mobile Single Parents Project is that a single parent journey doesn't get any easier depending on your journey. I grew up knowing about single parent women. I never knew about single fathers. I never heard single fathers, and I think that they deserve just as much support, if not more, because when they're out and about today, like as today, but in a general sense, swimming groups for single parents is usually a mother and child, not a father and child. Yeah. Changing rooms are usually for mothers and their child, not for fathers and their child. A lot of things are gravitated towards women. And I found that quite interesting, because even the levels of support that were out there, it's changed a lot now, don't get me wrong, but when I set up. So I just felt that men deserve to be saluted for the amazing works that they do in the lives of their children when it's not been easy. So that's near and dear to my heart. That is really a soul calling because of what I saw my mother go through, because I've been a single mother myself. I know the journey. We have the Ben Salmi. So because of what we've been doing, and again, I'm just a normal mum, but because people...
No, you're not.
I think it's understanding that we cook. You know, when you cook your recipe, you're just cooking your recipe. You don't see it as anything because that's what you've always been cooking. So I grew up quite isolated, so I just assumed every mother did what I did, every family. It's wrong to assume, but that's just how I saw it. And people would say, share it. So people have said we should start doing some sort of TV show to depict our lives, to inspire families to activate. And this is something we're really working on. So the new brand that we're birthing is the Ben Salmis.
Wow.
So being with the Ben Salmis, people are saying, like, it's not like the Kardashians, but a sort of, you know, fly on the wall experience, seeing what our lives are day in and day out with all my crazy bunch. You know, they are kids, they are young people.
That would be amazing.
You know, I think people see my kids and they go, oh my God, your kids are, they're kids, you know. And that was very important for me, that the aspect of the realism is the heart of what we do, because I'm very much aware that when children are young and they get involved in the media world or anything that's public and judgment, we can fall apart. And the mental health of my children is paramount. So I want my kids to be able to say, you know, I make mistakes, you know, I have wobbles. That's where I learn. I think it's so important. But I've got tweens and teens in the house. So do they have mood swings? Of course. You know, we go through all of that. And I think it's so important that people see the real side of what it takes to overcome and achieve. Because if you only see the results, you won't realize, well, oh, they're just like me. There's no different. You know, they're just an average family. If you live in my local area, you'll see me at the supermarket with my kids, and we're just an average family.
So who are you doing this with, this program? Are you doing it with Channel 4?
No, not yet. We haven't actually pitched it just as yet. So we're at the beginning stages. We're just putting branding together. So just getting used to it. Because of the work we do, a lot of the time when we're being invited to events, we're being invited as the Ben Salmis. And I thought that's really interesting, because when you think about families are what create legacy, right? You know, you've got the Hiltons, you've got, you know, the Sainsbury's family, you've got the Smiths. We can all think about a family brand that we can remember. So the question I really have for you is, what is your brand known for? Sometimes we don't realize, if we don't identify ourselves, if we don't write our own narrative, there's already one out there. So as a parent, I started to think about, how can I start operating like that? How do we create infrastructure? So we have family meetings, we have our own family anthem. We've put things in place that we want families to start thinking about. And going back to what I said earlier, is that why are we always so quick to auction our children away to the highest bidder? Why are the likes of all these amazing companies willing to pay you, your children, 250,000, 100,000? And it's a brilliant achievement. I just have one question for you. Why only plant in other people's forests? Why not plant in your forest too? Because what tends to happen, we spoke about this, Dawn, what tends to happen is that your child becomes too busy to do anything for its community. It can only drop in and out, too busy to mastermind with the family. Create masterminds within your group. Create saturation across platforms, across industry, so you as a family have influence in many different realms.
Well, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing.
I think that's really crucial. That's what we stand for as a family. As a family, we're involved in all aspects: education, technology, and we must be like that as family, because we must understand, in order to thrive, in order to go forward, in order to succeed, it takes a village. If you don't have your biological village, create your tribe. But it does take a village. You need to have support systems, because that was some of the issues that and challenges I faced doing it on my own.
I think it's interesting because most of our families, we are developing our children to give their talents to workplaces, to give their talents to outside of the family.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily benefit the family in the big way that they could do.
Absolutely.
So we're actually limiting ourselves.
Absolutely. Because that's why I call it auctioning. Because when you think about it, if you have finance, someone that's so good at finance and they go out, why are you not building up your own family infrastructure? There's many cultures that make it work. And I'm not putting people down. I just want to create that awareness, start the conversation, because the truth is, when our children graduate from Yale and Harvards and the Oxfords and the Cambridge, we actually don't have a position for them, if we can just be honest with ourselves. So what we're building as a family is not necessarily going to be seen now, but this is for my children's children's children for generations to come, is that I'm planting the tree. How long does it take for oak tree to grow? Yeah. And that's what we need to start thinking, is long terms, not salary. How can we create generational wealth? How can we create old money? I was shell-shocked when I entered into my adulthood, because I was like, I didn't land on this planet today on my own. What was happening before me? And not in a disrespectful way, but we have to create infrastructure where our children can integrate into. And someone's going to be listening to that, and it will make perfect sense because they're already doing it. But it's for those that are not thinking, wow, what is the purpose of sending your children to school? What is the purpose of going on to college, going on to university? Because guess what? If you don't have a purpose for your child, your bloodline, your generation, someone else will, and they're willing to pay for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they will use your children to build their dreams, and your children's dreams, well, they become non-existent.
Absolutely.
They stay in the brain, and then they disappear, get crowded with other things.
Absolutely.
So well, I'm sure you have this in your plan already, right? But I would suggest you make sure you talk to the BBC, Channel 4, Channel 5, ITV, Netflix, YouTube, you know, everybody who's out there who can put some serious money behind this Ben Salmi reality show that you're going to do.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think this could indeed help so many, not just Black families, but families around the world. It could help so many people, you know? So you make sure that when you put your package together, oh man, it can be amazing. Seriously. I know it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
That is the aim, Dawn. That is absolutely the aim.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for sharing about your amazing family life. I'm going to make sure that links to all the publications and so on are underneath the video, as well as links to all your various businesses and organizations. And people can contact you directly. I mean, I contacted you directly through LinkedIn, so you are approachable.
Yes, you know? Absolutely. We've got a team. I do have a PA, so sometimes the PA will do posts and stuff, but we'll always be made aware of things that we need to be dealt with personally.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. You are a real inspiration, Sabrina.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do. You've inspired me, you know, encouraged me to carry on and to grow, and to encourage my own family too. I mean, they're doing their own separate things, but you know, sometimes the imagination needs to be sparked. And I think you will definitely be sparking a lot of imaginations.
Think of the analogy of a tree, like the stump is one, but the roots are plenty and many. So it's always good for kids to be saturated in all different places. Families, like you still go off and follow your passion, but you have to understand it all comes back. All roads have to lead to Rome. Everything you do, you know, have a centralized trust fund for the family. Everything you do must be in alignment for your generational wealth. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
You're a genius. You know that.
Oh, bless you.
I'm sure you've been told that, you know, many thousands of times, but you really are a genius. Well done.
I've asked God to use me, and I definitely gain in purpose to my
He
life.
has answered your prayers.
Yes.
He really has. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
We'll talk again.
Take care. Thank you so much, Dawn.
Thank you. Bye.